So it's good to have everyone here and we'll welcome you to SPED 805. This is an assessment course. You'll be learning about a lot of different, well, three different assessments in particular, but we'll get into some detailed discussions about those. So, excuse me, a little bit before we start, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Matt Posey. I'm an instructor here at Fort Hays. I have been for about 5 years now. Also serve as academic advisor in the program. So Dr. Brooks and I are the two main advisors. So if your last name ends with M all the way to Z, you'll fall on my advisement load. And then Dr. Brooks has A all the way up to the letter M all the way through L. So she handles those. So we're kind of your go-to people on that. So welcome you to the class. I'll give you kind of a brief overview as far as what all we'll get into, and then we'll look at the syllabus, kind of look at some of the assignments and projects that we'll do during this 8 weeks. And then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about your first assignment, which is a group project. It's the only thing that you'll do in this class that's working with a group, and we usually have at least one group project in a majority of our classes because you in special ed you need to learn how to work with groups of people, mainly your IEP team, which involves multiple people. So after you get through the group project, it'll pretty much be everything will be done as an individual. So really a couple things for this class I was sharing with Debbie. I don't know if everyone heard this or not, but so before we used to always have this class in a 16-week format before we shifted over everything to the 8 week. But about 3 years ago, they asked me to start doing it in the summer and going to modify it. And it was a little bit of a challenge in the summer. And for one reason is the expectation for this course, regardless of whether you do it in a fall, a spring, or a summer, is you need to make sure you have access to a student for as a case study student, because you're going to be working with those students to learn how to utilize some of the assessments that we're going to talk about in this course. So that's one thing I'll point out, which most of you during the school year, that should not be an issue for you. Most of you are working in the schools, so it's just a challenge in the summer when school's out. And really the second expectation, it's real easy. I'm easy to work with, is communication. That's one of the main things. I realize you guys are working adults. You have a lot of things going on. You're trying to balance work life. You're trying to balance your personal life and professional. And I know things come up, things happen. And the only thing I ask is you just communicate with me, let me know that, hey, I've got a lot going on this week. You may have some IEPs coming up that you're responsible for, and we may have an assignment deadline. And it's going to be a real challenge. Just communicate with me, let me know, and I'll work with you and give you some extra time, give you an extension on that, and we'll get you through the course. As I start going over the course this evening, um, please note, Debbie kind of alluded to this, if you've looked at the syllabus, you think, oh my gosh, there's a lot to do in 8 weeks. And really, it is a busy class. There's a lot of things going on. You'll get through it. I will make sure you get through it. I will work with you. I want everyone to be successful with this course, and we can do it. The one thing is I'm going to tell you up front before I even screen share the syllabus with you is there will be a point in time in this class where a couple of assignments are literally going to overlap. You're going to get to the point, and it's going to be about toward the end of the third week as we're going into the fourth week, and you're going to find yourself finishing up one and then have already started on the upcoming because of the number of data points that we need to collect for a particular assessment. So I always tell everyone, just take everything one step at a time, 1 week at a time. You'll get through it. It's very doable, but I always like to just give everyone that heads up at the very beginning, knowing that when we get about the third and fourth week, you're going to see that overlap. And when I'm doing the Zooms, and when we're in that third week, I will remind you, hey, don't forget, I mentioned this. This is where we're kind of starting to cross two assignments, and they'll overlap. So that's really the probably the busiest part of the course. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quickly with you. and we'll kind of talk through this. Always, I can do this the first night. Yours should be popping this moment. Can everyone see my screen? It's because on my end, I can't really see it. So share the screen. So you'll look at the different weeks. So basically, this course has 3 modules. The third module is very short. It's right at the end of the 8 weeks. Okay, so once we get started here, about every 2 weeks, you're going to have an assignment due, or what we call an assessment report. The very first thing you're going to do is this week, for week 1, is basically just kind of learning the overview of the class and an introduction on the discussion board. That's just basically telling a little bit about yourself, where you work, a little bit about your background. Easy points there. It's 20 points. As long as you have it on there, make sure you respond to at least 2 colleagues. Okay, so that's due Sunday at midnight. All the assignments with me and my classes that I do, I always have them due on Sundays at midnight. And the reason I do that is because I know you're working adults, things may come up first part of the week, and it gives you a little window through the weekend to kind of finish some things up. Gives you all of Saturday through the day, Sunday into Sunday night. So I always try to have that due on Sunday night, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of wiggle room there. There will be one assignment, and it's the very last assignment that's not due on a Sunday. It's due on a Wednesday. And the reason is because it's a mock IEP video, and it takes me quite a bit of time to go through that. And they always want us to have our grades submitted on Monday at noon. So it gives me plenty of time to review your videos and go through those and score them. So everything's on Sunday night at midnight except that very final assignment. And I will remind you as we go along so it doesn't slip up on you. So I mentioned that we're going to work on a group project. And so at the conclusion of tonight on the Zoom, I would really encourage you to go in the course shell and self-enroll for one of the groups. Those groups are limited to 5, and you will work with those individuals that's in your group on an interview project. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in just a minute, kind of give you a breakdown of how that works. Okay. So that'll be your very first assignment. So you have discussion board this Sunday night coming up, and then the following Sunday, your group will submit the group report. And then we will rock along, and you will have an assignment due on Sunday the 7th, and it's an informal assessment. I will talk more about that next week. So basically, it's asking you to pick out 3 different informal assessments. Those could be anything pertaining to reading, spelling, math, be some things where you're wanting to assess behavioral problems. It doesn't all have to be academic. It could be some behavioral issues depending on what type of classroom you're working in. You can do one of each. They don't all have to 3 be reading. They don't all have to 3 be a math. You can mix them up if you want as well. Okay, so it's totally up to you. Informal assessments, literally, and we'll talk more in depth on this next week. I'm giving you an overview tonight. Is literally what it is, informal. It's something that you can use to measure the understanding of a skill set the student has in a very brief, short period of time, anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, something that's very quick, just a really quick snapshot, just to kind of gauge if they've understood a concept that you try to teach them, whether it's an academic or behavioral. Okay, always ask you to come up with 3 of those. And then we will end up doing what we call an assessment report. And I'm going to show you examples of that too, and where to locate the examples that I provide for you. Then you'll rock along. A couple weeks after that, we'll get down to April the 7th, and that will be starting module 2. And no, repeated that date. It will be April the 21st. I apologize for that. You'll go a couple weeks and we'll get down to April the 21st, and that is working with and learning about norm reference assessments. So for this, a majority of norm reference assessments, a lot of them that are out there require specialized training in order to administer those. Okay. And the training that I'm specifically talking about usually falls under the umbrella of the school psychologist or a school psychometrist, either one. Okay. So part of my background is school psychometry. So I have the credentials and license to go in and do it. I've administered hundreds of those through my experience. And so we will talk a little bit about those. You're going to learn a little bit about them. For that test or that assignment, always make it known I'm not asking you to go pick a specific norm reference and administer it when you don't have the credentials. That's not what we're asking you to do. Basically, we're asking you to partner with a school psych or a psychometrist in your district if you have that individual available. If you're a larger district, a lot of them do. If you're a smaller district, oftentimes they contract those individuals out and they come in periodically as needed and do the testing for those students that have been referred. So if you have those individuals in your district, we would ask you to seek them out and see if they would allow you to maybe observe them administering that, just kind of observe. And then if they would, share some of those results with you so you could work on this assessment report. If you don't have access or you have a challenge working with that individual in your district, meaning that they're really not really apt to work with you, they're apprehensive about it, I do have an alternative option for you in this class to complete this assignment. So I have a testing lab. I call it a testing lab video. Basically, I recorded myself administering the WJ4 cognitive to a student, recorded that so you can kind of see how that process works. Oftentimes from your side, you don't get to see that. Okay, it's somewhat of a mystery when you're working in a district because the individual comes in, whether it's the psychometrist or psychologist, they take the student, they go do their thing, and then you don't see them again until they score and they come back and do the MEGS meeting and they throw all this information at you, right? So I have that video posted. That is an alternate way for you to complete this assignment for the norm reference if needed. If you need to choose that option, I will provide you the comprehensive report that goes along with that testing session I did with the student in the video. Okay, that's if you need to do it. If you do need to use it, that's fine. It's not a problem. Okay, so just know that is a backup for you. So if you get up to that point with assignment and you're not having any luck working with those individuals, don't stress over it. All you got to do is email me, let me know, hey, Dr. Posey, I need to use that video. It's already posted in Blackboard. I'll show you where it's at. Can you send me the comprehensive report? Then I will schedule a time and go over that report with you to kind of help you out and understand it. Okay. Now, right about before I will start right through here, right before we actually start the norm reference, I'm going to start talking to you about the third assessment that you will work with in this course, and it's called a curriculum-based measurement, CBM. Okay. And I'm going to start kind of planting seeds with you, start talking about it. So here's where we're going to start talking about and getting into the overlap. I'm already starting to talk to you about CBM and you haven't even handed in the norm reference to me yet. And you guys in the back of your mind at that time in April, you're probably thinking, what is this guy doing to us? But remember, I'm just kind of letting you know tonight. So I'll start talking to you about the CBM and say, hey, I need you to think about a CBM that you want to use, curriculum-based measurement, a probe. We call it a probe. It's basically the short assessment that we're going to give. And I'm going to ask you to administer that approximately 6 times to get 6 data points. So if you start in April around that 4th week, and I'm starting to plant those seeds and talk to you about it, you could do a couple data points that week. It literally will only take you about 2 to 3 minutes, but you're not having to do them all in a short window of time. You can do maybe a couple during the week of April the 14th, a couple of the week during April the 15th through the 21st. Then you can drop down April the 22nd through the 28th and do a couple more. Maybe you'll do them on a Monday and then on a Thursday, or Monday and Friday. And if you do that, you already have your 6 data points, and then that week on writing. That's where we're gonna have a little bit of that overlap. Start talking to you about it. Another type of assessment, and you hadn't even done the norm reference yet or got it finalized. Okay, just make a note of that so you'll remember. Then we're going to get down into the CBM, and that will be down one of your last assessment reports that you'll want to do, and it's going to be due on Sunday, May the 5th. So you're going to see there's kind of about a pattern of every other week, one assignment every 2 weeks down through here, and use some time to write them. And again, all those are due on Sunday at midnight. And then we have a very quick turnaround. Here's what I talked about earlier when we started. That final is going to be due on the 8th. Very quick turnaround. You'll turn your CBM on a Sunday and turn around and submit your IEP video on the 8th. Now, for the final on the mock video, you're thinking, how in the world am I going to do that? It's real easy. You can do it at home, sitting at your kitchen table. You can do it at your classroom, on your planning period. You can do it in your home office, wherever you're going to do. It is a mock IEP. Literally, you're going to be sitting there conducting this thing as if the team is sitting there with you. I know they're not, you know they're not. Okay, but we're looking for some things within this video. And basically, in the video, you are literally going to present the information that you collected from doing these 3 assessments. You've already done the assessments. You've got all the data. You've got them in report format. You're even going to learn how to take the data and put it into a visual representation, whether it's a table, chart, or a graph. We're going to do that for each one of them. Okay. And so during mock AP, literally, you're just going to sit down and present your facts that you collected from doing the informal norm reference and the CBM. You're basically sharing it with the team, data you've collected to determine whether your student should be recommended for further testing, or should they just be recommended for some maybe tier 2, tier 3 interventions. Okay. So you're literally just presenting the information to the team. Okay, that video we recommend is 12 to 15 minutes. I have an outline for you to go on. Literally, you are presenting the information. You've collected it through the 8 weeks. You know the data, you're presenting it. Basically, during the video, I'm looking for kind of the flow of the meeting. Okay, just looking for the natural flow. I have a guideline for you. And just making sure that you have all your information together and that meeting flows. Always tell students every semester, every time we start this class, there's nothing worse than going into an IEP meeting and the teacher is not prepared and they're thumbing around and stammering and stuttering their way through it, and it's obvious. And just think what is going through the parent's mind across the table. Okay, so we're just looking for that flow. Right. I mentioned for each one of these, creating a visual representation. That's part of the report. Putting your data into a table, chart, or graph. It kind of goes along. I mentioned on your norm reference. How many of you guys have sat in on a MEEGS meeting in your experience up to this point? Have any of you, based on your role in the school MEEGS meeting? Everyone know what I mean? I see Debbie shaking her head. Does everyone else know what a MEEGS meeting is? Basically, the MEEGS, MEEGS, that's the meeting that takes place right after all the formalized assessments have been done and they're coming in to present a comprehensive report. So your district contracts me out to come in to do the testing. I do it. Might take me a couple sessions depending on the age of the student. I leave, I go home, I put all my information, score the reports, I compile everything into a comprehensive report, and I come back and present it. During that MEEGS meeting, there's going to be a lot of people at the table. You're going to be at the table, the building principal, the parents, and I walk in with about a 20-page report. The first half of the report is a lot of data that I verbally present. The second half is a lot of the statistical information, and I present it, I take it and I present it also with charts, tables, and graphs so that parent can see that in another form other than me just coming in and spewing out a lot of statistical information to them. They're getting to see that put over in some charts and tables and graphs, and it gives them another way to visualize it. It helps them to understand. Okay. So that kind of is an overview of the syllabus, what we're looking at with some of the assignments. So up to this point so far, is that overwhelming? Debbie's shaking her head. Yes, we'll get through it. Remember, 1 week at a time, Debbie. Just 1 week at a time. You'll get through it. It's very doable. Okay. One other thing I want to mention, just to kind of clarify, and this is when we went in and kind of realigned the class with this IEP, we used to have some other things that went with it. Okay. It was actually called a portfolio final, and you had to put all this into a portfolio. We pulled all that out and spread it around. And so basically with each one of these reports, so with the informal, we have a lesson plan template. Everything's already in there. You just literally have to go in and put the information in and do a lesson plan for the student, the case study student, based on the results that you collected for the informal. Okay. Then when you go down and do the normed reference, we're going to do the exact same thing, use the same exact template that's in the course shell, and you're going to look at the strengths and weaknesses that you collected from these assessments, and you're going to do a lesson plan based on the normed reference for your case study student, not for the whole class, but for that individual student. Okay. This template that we have is very similar to what is presented to you and required when you do the PPAT. Okay, so that's why we incorporate this so you see it multiple times, not just in 805, this class, but other classes that you'll take in the program. Okay, Debbie, do you have a
Can I
question?
ask a question? I do. When we do the informal assessment and then the norm reference test, because the norm reference has to be with the psychologist, does it have to be on the same student? The informal assessment and the norm
It is
reference?
not. So we always say if you can, it's really, it benefits you if you can use the same case study student. But when we get to this, sometimes we have to make an adjustment for that because your case study student may not be at a point where he or she needs to be tested or reevaluated.
Right.
So that is acceptable. It's not a
Okay.
problem. It's not going to affect anything on grades or anything like
Okay.
that. I've had students in this class that for each one of the assessments, they had to use a different student. And then we worked right through it. Again, this is to learn more about the process, but where it benefits you, if you can use all three or the same student for all three, you can see the correlation from the different tests that you're going to use on strengths and weaknesses. A lot of times they correlate, they line right up regardless of the type of assessment you're using. And then also you can see from the informal, when you get down to the CBM, because we're doing multiple data points, hopefully we're seeing that growth and those tables and charts will depict that. So But yeah, you can use a different student, okay, to
Okay,
answer your question. All right.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before I switch my screen and move over to the course shell? No? Okay, if you'll bear with me just here. Can everyone still see my screen? Is it still sharing where I'm in the shell? Okay. So we're going to get down to, I just have the syllabus up. That's where you find it there. Our learning modules are here. You'll click on this. It is slow right now, seems like. So here are the learning modules. Module 1, you'll see is the first 2 weeks. Then you'll go down to module 2. So I really wanted to get down to the resources tab because it's called SPED 805 resources. So if you'll bear with me just a minute here. Hopefully I'm not making you dizzy by scrolling through here. 805 resources. A lot of the documents and template forms are going to be found under the SPED 805 resources folder in the course shell. So for the group project, there's going to be 3 documents that you're going to need to make sure you include. We have a peer assessment rubric. And so, Debbie, let's say that Amanda and Heather are in your group. Okay, I see your names on there, so I'm just going to pick on you and use your names for this as an example. Debbie, Amanda are in a group. And once that assignment is submitted, I'm going to ask each one of you individually to submit this document, basically where you're going in and doing a review on your peers that work with you. And you're going to rate them. It's going to give you some areas there on how they contributed to the project, and you'll rate them on a score of 1 through 4, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest. And I will also ask you to self-rate yourself on that document. So Amanda, your document, you would list all of you, all group members, including you, and you would go in and rate them, and you would rate yourself, and then you're going to submit that as an individual when that assignment's due. When you sign up for a group, let's say you, Amanda, Debbie, and Heather, let's just say you're group 1. When you sign up, it attaches you to group 1. So for that report, not the peer assessment rubric, but for your interview report, you're just going to submit 1 document. And it ties all 3 of you to that 1 document, your names. Okay. But you're each going to submit a peer assessment. Okay. I mentioned the lesson plan template. It's also found in this folder on SPED 805 resources. And I will cover that when we get like next week as I start talking about the first individual report. I'll point this out to you again. Here is the testing lab video recording that I mentioned. That's it. When we get on down there, you can find it right here if you need to use it. It's already in the shell. Okay. Sample reports. This is a good resource for you because I uploaded examples of assessment reports. I uploaded an example for the informal. I uploaded an example for the norm reference, and I uploaded an example for the CBM. So when we get ready to work on each one of those, you can pull an example up to see how they were laid out. And basically you're not shooting in the dark on that. I mean, it's already laid out, the format, the basic format for you. It will also show examples of previous students and the tables, charts, or graphs they created for each one of those. And I will pull each one of those up on the particular weeks when we're actually working on them, just to make sure each and every one of you have a clear understanding. Okay. So We have those examples in there as well for English reports. So there is an example to reference or refer to for each time that you work on those assignments. Okay. Again, the recording and the testing lab is there. The particular week, when we get in there for the norm reference, I will spend a little time that night, even though you may not have needed this recording. I will spend a little time that particular week going over what a comprehensive report looks like, just so you have a little bit of knowledge of that. Oftentimes you never really understand what all's in there and what the psychologist or psychometrist is talking about when they're going over it. And it just helps you when you're sitting across a table and they're going over the information. You can refer back to, oh yeah, I remember in SPED 805, Dr. Posey went over some of this. Exactly. I totally understand what the psychologist is talking about now. And so I can point out some things for you to look at to help you kind of interpret and determine whether that particular student is going to qualify for services or not. Okay, those reports are very lengthy. I mentioned earlier in this Zoom session, it's not uncommon for those to be upward of 20 pages long. There's a lot of detailed information in there in those, but I will share one with you in class that week to give you an idea what all's in it, what it looks like. Okay. Any questions on those? The CBM, something I will to you, and I'll give you the reference. So that way, if you want to look ahead or you have it written down, there's a way, because a lot of times students will say, oh my gosh, how can I come up with a probe for my CBM? So there is a website that we've used many semesters. It's called easycbm.com. It's a free resources on the website you can go to. It literally has it broken down by subject area. It'll have like math, ELA, science. You click on it, kind of grade level, and it will give you some probes that are already created based on the skills. So that is a free resource, a free website, something you might want to reference as you're starting to look for those probes as we get closer. Had a lot of students use that website in the past, worked out well for them. So even the students, the first 8 weeks used it, first 8 weeks of the spring semester. So again, remember the SPED 805 resources folder, it's all this course shell. A lot of your templates, a lot of the examples, references for you to look at are all right there. Okay. Now, I'm going to circle back around really quick and talk about the group project. And I'm going to go back and pull the syllabus up quickly. There is an outline of some guiding questions for you that will direct or guide your interview when you interview a specific individual. Okay, so going back to using the example of Debbie, Amanda, and Heather being in group one. And so each of you in your districts are going to pick someone, whether it could be a psychologist, school psych, it could be the school psychometrist, could be a special ed teacher. It's got a lot of years experience. And so basically you're going to interview them. There are about 12 it's the first thing that you do after you sign up for your group. So I'm going to scroll down in the syllabus, and these are in the syllabus for you, but I want to show you where they're at so you'll know. So here we are. First thing talks about paper, a little bit of the stipulations for the assignment. So here are, and they're bullet points. So on page 8, it wraps over to the top part of page 9 in your syllabus. There are the guiding questions for your interview. So Amanda, whoever you're going to use, One of the questions are why certain tests are used in the district. Each district may have specified tests that they use. If you have a full-time school psych, the district may prefer the WJ4 to use for determining placement. Okay. Why do they do that? That may be their test of preference. I don't know. So every district's going to be different. How often or when are they used? Okay, so how often are the different tests used, screeners in your district? There may be some screeners that are used where they go in and use them for benchmarking purposes. They may do them a couple times per quarter. Okay. Who can administer formal and informal assessments? Does the person administering them need any specialized training? So, what are the formal and informal tests used in your district, and who has the special training? And I mentioned that a lot of times it's a school psych or a psychometrist. Ask if any informal tests are used, and if so, when and why are they used? If they are not used, ask why. Okay. And so you'll see on the bullet points, I believe there's 12 of them. That's what's going to guide your interview. So each of you individually are going to do that for your person. Then you're going to collaborate with your group and you're going to start combining the information that you've collected and build one paper. Okay. So this will be the very first thing you're going to do tonight. After, I highly advise you to go ahead and self-enroll. And then I strongly encourage you to go ahead and start getting your questions answered by your person. Okay. On the paper, you can see the interview. Here is the rubric. So you're going to have an introduction. So group one, you're going to discuss, basing your introduction, a brief background of the person you are interviewing, a little bit about their position, the years of experience, names of tests that he or she's administered, and any other information. And so in that, you're going to combine and tell just briefly a little bit about each one of your person. Debbie may say, I interviewed Susie Q, who's a school psych with over 20 years in the testing, 20 years experience testing, and she prefers to use the WJ5 and the WISC. Amanda maybe interviewed Johnny Joe. He's got 8 years experience as a school psychologist, and he uses multiple assessments, and that's going to be your introduction. So each of you are combining that into your introduction. Then you're going to drop down. You'll have a header that says types of assessment. And so each of you are going to combine the types of assessment that each of your individual used into this section. And so you're merging everything into one. Okay. When you start doing this, always encourage the groups to create a Google Doc that's shared where you can go in there and input your information as you get it, and then perhaps maybe set up a Google Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting where after you've got everything in there, you guys can Zoom and then do a screen share, pull your document up and discuss, hey, what do we want to trim out of our introduction? What do we want to trim out or tweak in our assessment section and the assessment administration and all down through here? Okay, so really that's the easiest way to do it. Your group may have a preferred method. I always just throw that out there as a suggestion. If you can go in and create a Google Doc that's shared and each one of you are adding to it as you're getting your information, and then schedule a Zoom meeting or a Google Meets. Okay. That way you guys can kind of talk through it. Any questions on that? I know I've probably thrown a lot of information out there. I just kind of want to give you the broad overview of the course and kind of the expectations. And I wanted to circle back around and then talk about this project because it takes a little time. And, if you don't go ahead and go ahead and try to get started by enrolling in a group and then also starting your interview, time will get away from you before you know it. So. If you register in a group and you have trouble locating emails and all that, shoot me an email and let me know who all is in your group, and I can send you an email back with the group, individual student emails if it'll help you out in communicating and reaching out to one another. You can also do it within the course shell as well, message one another. So, any questions on that or anything I might have covered tonight? Debbie, I see your wheel spinning and you're thinking, oh my gosh, are you okay? Okay. Amanda, any questions? Is that
No, no, that makes sense. No, my only thing I was just thinking about was just the trying to figure out what student, if we're trying to have a consistent student to see trying to plan that out.
if you can, it's not a have-to deal. It's not a deal breaker. It's not going to affect a grade on any of your sum. It's always just tell the students it it's a little bit more beneficial for you if you can, because you're giving that same student all three of the assessments, you've got the data and you're merging it. Now, if you're not able to use that same student and we get down to the mock IEP, and I always hear a question, well, how do I do this? I had to use three separate students. Just pick one of the three and refer to that student, and just as we'll go under the assumption that that student did all of them for that mock IEP. That's just kind of one of the things that we have to modify when we do that particular assignment for, let's say, if you had to use three different case study students. I'll
Okay.
know how you did them, but for the purpose of that video, I'll just say, just select one and we'll go on the premise that student did all three.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it makes
Again,
sense.
I'm more looking for the flow of that meeting and making sure you cover all the information that you collected versus, you know,
Yeah,
the student one, two, or three. I already know that because I've already reviewed your papers in the first 7 weeks of the class. I'll know that. I'm just looking for the ebb and flow of that meeting and the presentation. Okay.
yeah, no, I hear that there could be the value of it. So that's where I would like to try to make it work. So,
Yeah, if you can, great. If not, again, it's not a deal breaker for this. Okay. It's not, especially, man, we had to get really creative back during COVID when schools were shut down, and we did. And I'm just going to throw this out there for accessibility purposes, and we had to really make some accommodations during COVID and the shutdown. But for some of these, they may have had to do some of the interaction with the students by Zoom video conference. So some of them were having to use their neighbor's kid or relative's kid and having to do it by Zoom, and so we really had to make some modifications. But we got through it. They got a lot of value from the class still, so you can still learn a lot from it. Yeah.
no, that sounds good. I appreciate it.
And you don't care if that's based on behavior or academics, correct?
No, you can do it on behavior. And that's right. You can mix it up for the informals, especially. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right.
Yeah. Because some of your other classes, I've got another course that I teach this semester that's actually a 16-week course. And it's dealing with a lot of behavior management, behavior modification, and yeah.
Well, that's why I asked, because I just did the class on behavior in the first 8 weeks. So it was all focused on behavior. So now I'm checking to make sure this
Yeah,
can be
you can.
behavior or academics.
It can for especially on the informal. I've had them really mix that up. Now, once we get on the norm reference, it's gonna be a little bit more focused on academic, cognitive, and achievement.
Okay.
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 Any other questions? When we're on the Zooms on Wednesday, again, those are not mandatory. I always encourage them because sometimes we might get into some Q&A and that some things will come up and you can benefit from that. It's also good just having that checkpoint, I call it, or check-in time, and you can just ask some questions and get clarification. But if not, just know that I record them and I'll post it sometime after our Wednesday night Zoom session. Always try to have it done that evening and loaded on the course shell. It'll be loaded in there and it'll be labeled. It'll say week 1 Zoom.
Okay.
And it'll have like today's date. It'll say week 1 Zoom dash March 20th, week 2 Zoom, March 27th, and you can go back and review it. If you ever get stumped or you hit a roadblock on some stuff and you're like, man, I need some extra help, shoot an email and I'll hop on the Zoom with you and we can talk through it or we can email back and forth. I always check my emails early in the morning. I'm an early morning guy, so I'll check them and have them answered a lot of times on or before 7. And then I always check them again after 5. Okay, so if you email me in the middle of the day, no, I'll get you on the second round after 5 o'clock. Okay. But I always try to have them done early and then I do it again after 5.
Okay.
All right. And then again, if we need to hop on and do a quick 10-minute Zoom, anytime you're struggling or just not understanding something, do it all the time. So you gotta do is just reach out to me. Okay.
Oh,
So take it 1 week at a time for this. And just remember, when we get around week 4, you're going to see a little bit of that overlap. And I will remind you that week, hey, this is where we're having the overlap. So just take a big, deep breath. We're going to get right through it. Everything will just kind of line right out once we get through that week number 4 where they overlap. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna give you one other thing to think about. So when you start compiling this, and I'll mention it again next week, by time because you'll be asked to submit your interview questions and all that within the body of this paper on the group project up here. By the time you compile all that, don't be alarmed if once you get everything together and merged that you have 25 or 30 pages in there. Okay, that doesn't mean you're writing a scholarly paper that's that long, but you'll have interview questions that Debbie that you collected. We'll add them in there, and Amanda will do the same thing, and Heather, and then you're going to add there'll be a little group contract stating that you are committing to contributing to the paper. So by the time you throw all that in there, that document will be long. Okay, but a lot of it's just supporting documents. Okay, we will hit this again next week. I'll kind of review it and make sure everyone's at a good place with it. The group interview report, and then I will lead right into and spend some time on the slide decks on talking about informal assessment. We'll get into discussion on that. I have a PowerPoint. After tonight, I'll pop up slide decks for each week to kind of focus on the informal or the norm reference or the CBM, and we'll talk about some specifics related to each one of those assessments. Okay. Any questions on that? I know it's a lot for the first night doing the overview and then kind of circling back and getting into the group projects. So
where do you
again,
go to get put into a group?
yeah. So
I'm not very good at this.
oh, so can everyone see my course shell after I exited out of the syllabus? So my course shell may look, because I have maybe a little bit more tabs, but if you look at your button tabs right across here, you have content, calendar, announcements. You go right over here to groups. You click
Oh,
on it,
okay.
and it shows basically I created 7 groups. And you're going to click on interview groups.
Okay.
And so it shows the unassigned students. So Amanda has not joined a group yet, obviously, because tonight's our first meeting. Let's see. Heather, I'm looking because I don't see her name. Looks like maybe Heather's already in. Deborah Everett, see here, you're right here. So you'll go in there and you'll click on your name and it'll give you an option to what group you want to register in. You will
Oh,
look down and some people already look ahead at the course shell. that's got their names already in here, and it will cap at 5. There's a 5 group. And so you can see, group 1, it's already capped out, so it won't allow you to enroll in group 1. And then I'll go on down
Okay.
here, group 2's capped out. Okay, so these are some
Okay.
that got in once the course shell was open and went ahead and registered in their group, even though they may not be on Zoom with us tonight. Okay, so you want to select the group.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. So again, that'll be the only time you have to do a group. This class is right here at the beginning.
Okay.
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 Most of the time when we do Zooms, there'll be around about 45 minutes. Tonight went a little bit longer because doing the overview, but most of the time it's right at 45 minutes when we meet each week. Okay. What's that before we go? Everyone good?
Yes.
Okay. Please, if you have questions, you may think of something after we get off here, just shoot me an email. Man, I know you emailed me a follow-up from our meeting the other day. I'll look at that. I've got another class right after this one, so I'll look at it when I finish that up. And again, if you have any questions after tonight's meeting, just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you either later this evening or early in the morning, okay?
Okay.
So,
All
thank you
right,
so
thank
much.
you guys. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You
Have a good
too.
evening.
Bye-bye.